Cash is here to share the news.
Hi, Neil. Yeah, President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe left the White House this morning. They are going to play a round of golf at Republican, reminding them that the election, while it seems far away, is really not that far off. He made a big show of pulling the U.S. out of the UN Arms Trade Treaty, something the NRA has wanted for a very long time. In front of a cheering crowd, the president signed what he described as a message asking the Senate to discontinue the treaty ratification process. President Trump talked about issues that appeal to his base while trying to paint Democrats as far outside of the mainstream.
Let the Boston bomber vote. He should be voting, right? I don't think so. Democrats want to disarm law-abiding Americans while allowing criminal aliens to operate with impunity.
We've seen the president do this at rallies in the past. He often talks about Senator Bernie Sanders, suggesting that all Democrats are following Sanders' lead and the Democratic Party is becoming a socialist party. It's something we've seen other Republicans do as well, and it seems to be one of his strategies heading into 2020. Neil?
All right, Ellison, thank you very, very much. So Ellison sort of outlined what the president's approach to this might be for 2020, using some examples of some of the premier or front-running Democratic candidates to say, I believe in just the opposite. They're focused on getting illegals here. I'm focused on protecting you at the border. One of them talks about letting convicted felons and those in jail vote. I think I should be looking after you, paying the tab for their keep in jail. So you can see where this is going. Let's get to our panelists to see where they see this going for the 2020 campaign. Catalina magazine publisher Kathy Aru. We got Republican strategist Evan Siegfried and Trump 2020 advisory board member Jenna Ellis. Jenna, is that the strategy here? And did he tip his hand in speaking to the NRA yesterday?
Well, I think that President Trump has always been just very open with what he thinks. And so that's not going to change, and that's certainly not going to change going into 2020. And let's remember, he's the incumbent here, and he has that advantage. And so with the economy being the greatest that it has been in a while, and even, if ever, and then also the unemployment rate being so low, if we look historically back at the incumbent presidents who haven't been reelected, most recently Bush 41 and also President Ford, then that really was a part of what impacted that. And so I think with President Trump actually talking to policy issues and things that impact everyday Americans, that's going to help the incumbent advantage, where the Democratic left is only focused on hating President Trump, and they're talking about him as character rather than talking about policy issues. So for him to focus on that, I think that speaks to the everyday American.
See, I wonder right now at this stage whether you think, Kathy, that the Democrats are just committing a bunch of unforced errors. And they're making stupid moves. I mean, whatever the wisdom of allowing, prisoners to vote, including those that were behind the Boston attacks, it doesn't jive with a lot of people. It's like, what are you talking about?
Well, they actually can vote in 2 states, in Maine and Vermont. They already can vote.
But if you're going to make that a signature issue and talk about the need to do that.
It's already happening. I mean, it's already out there, so I don't know why it's even an issue. They are voting, except in 12 states. Felons can't vote when they come out of jail, but it's already there. So.
He's talking in jail.
Yeah, 2 states already do it.
But do you find that a stupid thing to say?
Well, we've got 18 months to go. So they're not going to focus on the economy right now, because if the election was today, Trump would win. But we have 6 financial quarters to go.
No, you're right about that. But that says everything right there, Evan. They can't talk about the economy because of the time being, whether you want to give the president credit or not, but we certainly would give him the blame if it were lousy. That's doing well. And he is surgically picking through these issues to say the Democrats are missing that and espousing these issues.
Well, first of all, should terrorists vote? Andy Lassner, who's the executive producer of The Ellen Show, who's no moderate or even conservative, he's very liberal, said he would not vote for any candidate who believes that the Boston bomber should vote, period. So that's a schism on the left.
So there's Bernie Sanders. It's a no vote from the producer of The Ellen Show.
And he's very influential within the Hollywood left. And at the same time, when you start looking at the economy, I'm not as confident that this economy is going to be able to help the president. Remember, we only won the White House by 77,744 votes in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we had the economy booming in the 2018 midterms. Nonetheless, we got shellacked as a party. Republicans won in 2014.
Well, a lot of that was an inability to explain the tax cuts in a better way and let someone else take the narrative from you, right? So how did they avoid that?
Well, right now, the data shows that the American people still have the same feeling that they did pre-2018 midterm elections, and they have it now.
Right.
So we have to do a much better job explaining it, and also take out a lot more of the noise and distractions that come out there,
but the
and hammer
economy
that home.
necessarily isn't the only issue. I mean, we have, obviously, the Mueller report has been totally closed. That was a big thing going on in 2018. And also in 2016, not only did you not have an incumbent, but President Trump didn't have a track record. So you had a lot of the evangelicals that weren't,
But to his point,
that were nervous that
in the midterms, by which time
vote.
the economy was really sizzling, it did diddly squat, right?
Well, but I think that that's because there were some other factors that now the Democrats won't have, and they're trying to beat this dead
But don't
horse.
you think that's
also demographic?
But-
Think of that, though, what you just said. You could argue whether you agree with the economy's robust or not, but certainly an economy like this, the president should be up 10 points in the polls, and he's fighting for his political life in some of the states he outlined
Depending
for
on the
other
poll, though.
reasons. Well, we could talk about the
Depending
polls
on
all
the
we want, but shouldn't he be doing better just in the polling?
I think that it depends on the polls, and it certainly depends on which, mainstream media
He just
outlet
called
they-
this the greatest recovery in the history of man, right? So if that is the case, it's certainly the strongest in decades. He should be putting up Ronald Reagan numbers. He might still, but he's not now.
And I think that he will. And I think that there will be the difference between 2016 and 2020 is that he has that track record. He does have, the economic advantage. He has the incumbent advantage. And I think you're going to see many
Jimmy
more.
Carter had the incumbent
so
advantage.
many more people, though.
George Bush Sr. had the incumbent advantage.
Let's acknowledge the
But-
reality, though.
but the
We've got
economy was
the base of that voted for Trump in 2016 shrinking due to just natural attrition. 46% of the electorate in 2016 were non-college educated white voters. They went 2/3 for President Trump. They are expected to be 43%. And remember, it gets back to that 77,744 votes.
Right.
And again,
Further,
evangelicals-
See, I thought it
Hold on,
was
hold on.
743.
And then also
Are you sure
Republicans-
it's 700?
one or two. But we also have, the Republicans normally dominate with senior citizens, 65 plus. They went to the Republican Party by 16 points in 2014. The Republican Party only won them by +2. So we're seeing what could be a durable shift in the electorate, which has the Trump campaign worried. They're taking out Facebook ads targeting senior citizens to try and bring them back. I don't see this as a
we don't know.
campaign
To all of your
strength at
fine
this
points
point.
here, we don't know. But look, Kathy, the one thing that amazes me thus far is that I can understand the obsession with the Mueller report. A lot of you want hearings. Fine.
Right.
But there was a poll released earlier this week about the issues most dominating Americans' concern. Health care with immigration. We're taking turns being number one.
Right, usually they are.
Mueller wasn't in the top 5, wasn't in the top 10, wasn't in the top 15.
No.
Was just below aliens from Neptune coming to our country.
Well, it's like
so I'm just saying that maybe it's Democrats this time who are barking up the wrong tree.
Well, it's we don't want to focus on the Mueller report. It didn't give the Democrats what they wanted, so they need to look at the investigations. They need to have more investigations.
And that's what they
need to-
promised. That's what they
Right,
promised.
right.
But it must be serious enough for Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer to say, have the hearings, but be careful here. And they learned from Republicans.
Right.
Overzealous lead.
Yeah, you can't put all your eggs in that basket, so they want to spread it around. So let's say they're not
See,
even
that would
talking
have been a
about
perfect analogy last
Easter,
week.
and
Easter.
I'm sorry.
That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry. I mean,
a little late.
I'm a little late, but Pelosi, she also said, let's not focus on impeachment because they know they can't impeach him. The Senate, they don't have the votes in the Senate. So Pelosi is trying to say, let's not focus on these things that we cannot win.
But there are many on the left, the extreme left,
Right.
who are very much focused on impeachment.
But that's the problem. These candidates, we
Right.
have 20 people against Trump. They can't go too far left, or they're going to lose so many voters.
Which matters more to them, do you think? Usually in an election, you go for someone who can help you win, right?
Yeah.
Is it your sense when you talk to Republicans and all that, they hope it's Joe Biden because they think they have a good shot against him? Or they hope it's not Joe Biden because they think that he could be the biggest problem?
I think that right now Republicans are just so focused on pro-Trump and everything that he's done for Americans that really no Democratic candidate, for all different reasons, they don't have a cohesive platform. They're basically on an apology tour right now. I think Kathy conceded a really important point that the Democrats didn't get the outcome they wanted, and so they're focused on all of these other issues. And so right now there really is no front runner. It depends on which Democrat you talk to, but the Trump base is so supportive, and he's going to get people who are so much more openly
Is that base
voting
alone
for him.
enough to close the deal for him?
Absolutely. I think he definitely wins in 2020 because he has the votes. He has a much supportive base, people who's
He
either
might,
stayed
but
home
if you
or
think
voted
he can work the
independent.
same magic with the same base
But
this
the base
time.
has
That would be a
increased.
mathematical anomaly, to put it mildly.
But I think his base has increased because people, and even people I've talked to who have been hesitant in 2016 because he was a new candidate, have seen the track record and they are open Trump supporters. Even some of my Democrat friends, frankly, are saying, you know,
I don't believe
our party
you have any Democrats.
is,
No, she doesn't.
Kathy's my friend.
I don't talk
Come
to
on,
her.
Kathy.
You don't. Nor should you.
Yes.
Both of you should ignore each other. Well, guys, I want to thank you both very, very much. By the way, if Wall Street's worried about all of this back and forth and a constitutional crisis, funny way of showing it, we're going to get into that in just a bit. Meanwhile, the president is skipping the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's not gone once since he's been president. They still carry on with the dinner. I think a historian is entertaining them this year. That's a party to book. But in the meantime, the president is going to the Badger State of Wisconsin to sort of say, look, I'm not going to swanky parties in Washington. I'm here with you. It was a state that he barely won, but it was significant when he did. After this, the president is set for a big rally tonight in Wisconsin. This would mark a third year of not attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where journalists like myself dress up in very, very tight tuxes. Of course, some of them are thinner than I am, and the tuxes aren't really that tight. But you get the point. He's not doing that. Third year in a row, he is not doing that, opting instead to meet with those who are in his base, who like the job he's doing, and he hopes in that crowd that he addresses. This is about the dozenth time he's been appearing in Wisconsin since 2015, when he first announced his run for president. A guy who helped him secure that state is the former governor of that state, Scott Walker, who joins us on the phone right now. Governor, very good to have you.
Hey, Neil, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
How do you think Wisconsin looks now, Governor?
Well, it's going to be a tough battle, just like it has been in the past, not only for the president, but for many statewide candidates. He won in 2016 just by a hair.
Right.
And it's going to be that close again, but I believe he can win again in 2020 as long as he gets the message out about the positive things he has done for the state and the people across the country. And, as your panel was just talking about a moment ago, and he's got to be that in a combination, reminding the voters why whomever the Democrats nominate is going to be embracing not traditional Democrat ideas, but socialist ideas that I don't think work in the Midwest, certainly not in Wisconsin.
You know, some of the numbers look good for him, Governor. Some would be a little bit worrisome. It's very early, as you often remind me. But if you think about it, those who feel that things are going well in the economy, they like him, but that number has gone down, oddly enough. 45% of Wisconsin voters in a Marquette poll view the president favorably, but 35% are getting increasingly worried. Now, those numbers don't necessarily jibe with votes, because a lot more of them had a negative view of then candidate Trump and still voted for him over Hillary Clinton, albeit by a small margin. What are they worried about? That he's not delivering the goods, or what?
No, I think actually more than anything, it's from many of the media outlets here in the state and across the country. They get this false narrative of who he is and what they should believe versus what has actually happened. And that's why I think the two key things are get to the voters, not just through the candidate himself, through President Trump, but through the people he's going to talk to tonight here in Greenville. That over 80% of Americans benefited from the president's tax cut, yet most of them don't believe that. The other key part, though, and this is where we saw it happen in 2016, we saw it happen in other statewide elections. Once it's clear as to who the Democrats are going to put up on the ballot, and we can see just how far out of whack they are with traditional values here in the state of Wisconsin about people, if they're able to work, being required to work, about all the other things that are part of the far left these days, I think that shifts towards the president.
You know what's weird, though, Governor, and you and I talked about this before, even though the tax cut did, and I crunched the numbers, 8 out of 10 Americans did get a tax cut. But fewer than 5 out of 10 believe they did. So that's an uphill message. The facts and the statistics are with you. We can argue about whether it was evenly distributed in the rest, and I don't want to go down that road. But for that many to not even know or think they got a tax cut that they did gets back to what some Democrats have been saying, that it was so paltry that many didn't notice. What do you think?
Well, I wrote a piece in yesterday's Washington Times. I was going to say local paper. I've written the local paper too, but yesterday in the Washington Times, I encouraged people to read, because I mentioned that I think it was signed, and then Republicans stopped talking about it. I encourage the president, be it tonight or any other time he's in Wisconsin or any other battleground state, bring up on the stage 2 or 3 families, just everyday, all-American families up there, and have them talk about how much they save. Because I think most of us, because we don't get paychecks anymore, our paychecks get deposited directly into our bank accounts. Most people don't know how much they saved from the tax cuts. It's not just
they would see if there's a little bit more, if there's a little bit more in that checking account, right? And I guess it gets back to another general issue, Governor, if you'll indulge me here. The president bemoaning the Mueller hearings and investigations. As you know, a lot of his former staff members, present staff members, have been subpoenaed as witnesses to speak before the House Judiciary and other committees. He said, quoting the president, the Democrats are trying to win 2020. The only way they can maybe luck out, and I don't think it's going to happen, is by constantly going after me on nonsense. But if separate polls show Americans at least want to hear some of these people out, they don't think that impeachment is the right process. Is he risking alienating them?
No, I think in the end, when I talk to people, and it's one of the nice things about being out and about these days, not being with a big team of government folks, is that you talk to people, and that's not what they're talking about. The people in Washington, in the bubble in Washington, are consumed with this discussion. The bottom line is people care about the economy. They care about their own economy more than anything. They care about whether they have a job, whether wages are going up. They care about what their kids are going to do and their grandkids are going to do. They care about, for example, I think once people, the president and others, point out that ideas like Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All could actually put Medicare for seniors at risk by providing it to a larger group of voters out there. I think the more those issues are contrasted, the more that people see that the promises of socialism fail. They promise prosperity, they deliver poverty. We see it real time in places like Venezuela today. When you make that contrast, those are the things that people care about. And right now, the Democrats have been successful in many parts in creating this caricature of the president.
Well, we'll see. But he's got to deliver the goods and the right marketing message. A very, very busy week for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. First, he powwows with North Korea's Kim Jong-un in Russia, then a meeting with China's President Xi Jinping in China. So forget about this focus on the North Korean leader. What is Putin up to? Is he just stirring the pot? Let's get the read from our ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell. Ambassador, very good to have you. Thanks for coming.
Nice to see you, Neil.
All right. We have a slight delay, Ambassador. I apologize for that, but it is good to have you. Let me ask you first about what you think Putin is up to.
Well, look, I think he's got a lot of explaining to do. He certainly has to explain all of his actions that are going on in Europe. Here we've seen Putin and the Russians, use chemical weapons on their opponents in the United Kingdom. They've grabbed land in Ukraine right here in European soil. They're holding they've been holding 24 Ukrainian sailors for 153 days now as hostage. They shot down a passenger jet in Ukraine, killing 298 people. I think there's a lot of explaining that he has to do.
I'm just wondering then, in the case of North Korea, whether we can trust the North Koreans right now if we see this guy hobnobbing with the leaders of China and Russia. Obviously, he's trying to no one has a problem with that. The president clearly doesn't have a problem with that. World leaders don't have a problem with that. But we've already heard from Pete Buttigieg, who was saying that maybe Vice President Pence has a problem with that, and maybe the religious right has a problem with that, and maybe the Republican Party has a problem with that. You referred to it as sort of like a hate hoax. What did you mean by that?
Well, look, the only thing that I want to focus on is knowing the vice president, knowing that he's a religious man. I know him personally. I can attest, I think I have some unique information when it comes to who he is. And the fact of the matter is that he doesn't hate anyone. And so what I wanted to do is step out and just give my personal assessment of someone that I know and someone that I respect as a man of God. He and his wife are both great Christian people who don't have hate for anyone. Let me also just say this, Neil. I am leading a push, a new push, on an old U.S. policy, which is to decriminalize homosexuality in the 71 countries around the world where it's criminalized. And the Vice President, Mike Pence, supports this effort. And his office has been very helpful. And so I just wanted to step out and give my personal viewpoint on a situation that I know and that I have a unique perspective on.
So the Vice President's never treated you differently or looked at you differently that you know?
No. He's a great friend of mine, and we have a lot of subjects that we talk about, and we have a lot of shared values.
All right, so when the rap against Republicans, and obviously this is another point there, but Buttigieg was getting at, aren't open to those who are gay, you say?
Oh, look, I think that's an old question that's been answered lately. We've seen the last several years really both parties welcoming all sorts of different types of people. I mean, diversity and tolerance means that you welcome all sorts of different voices and that you don't always agree on everything, but you welcome their voice. And I think that's what we've seen from both parties for a long time. This is a non-issue.
All right, if you'll indulge me still, Ambassador, this was coming from Franklin Graham, the religious pastor, saying that the mayor says he's a gay Christian. As a Christian, I believe the Bible, which defines homosexuality as a sin, something to be repentant of, not something to be flaunted, praised, or politicized. The Bible says marriage is between a man and a woman, not two men, not two women. What do you think of that?
Well, look, I'm a gay Christian. I believe wholeheartedly in being an imperfect follower of Christ. I think that has really nothing to do with the many gay Christians who believe differently. And I think that's what we should do, is recognize that not everyone has the exact same view on these issues.
So I don't know Mayor Buttigieg's political future, but if he were the Democratic nominee, others have hinted and whispered there is no way this country would elect a gay president. What do you think of that?
I'm going to stay away from politics, Neil.
Probably a wise strategy. Let me step back, Ambassador, and thank you for indulging me on that, but it's in the news, as you know. Germany has come under some heat from the administration for not upping its military support to help fund NATO. I had the Polish Prime Minister here a couple of weeks ago, and he was bemoaning that it was putting a disproportionate onus on those who are meeting the 2% minimum requirement of their GDP to put toward military expenditures. And the Germans seem to make it clear not only they're going to stay at these levels decidedly below that figure, but they won't change anytime soon. What do you think of that?
Well, one of the great things is we have a president who is very clear. President Trump has been very clear that our NATO allies should burden share. And the good news is since 2016, we have seen $41 billion. Think about that, $41 billion more in defense spending for Europe and Canada, because this president has made burden sharing a priority. The commitments from our European allies for 2020 is $100 billion. So this is in direct this is a direct accomplishment of the President and the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who make this a priority. But there's no question that our allies need to commit to what they committed to NATO. It's called the Wales Pledge. In 2014, all of the NATO members made this pledge. And what they said, and what they promised NATO, is that they would deliver 2% of their GDP that they would spend on military defense. Germany needs to do that. They have not done that yet. They have not made a verbal commitment that they can meet the pledge of 2% by 2024, and we will continue to pressure them to meet the NATO commitments.
All right, we'll watch closely. Ambassador, thank you for taking the time. Good catching up with you. All right. In the meantime, we do have Attorney General William Barr. He's going to be on Capitol Hill next week. How do you think that's going to go? Serving as president of the National Rifle Association Chief Wayne LaPierre, that they had been going back and forth at each other. Now Oliver North is saying he has no intention of serving a second term as president. I believe LaPierre had argued that there was a power struggle going on and that Oliver North was behind it. Don't know the truth in either case. What we do know is that Oliver North has nixed a second term to be the head of that organization the president just addressed yesterday. We'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, is expected to testify next week, but already a number of House Democrats want to make sure that more Trump officials are speaking up as this subpoena power struggle continues. As you might have heard, the president is saying those subpoenas have gone out for many in his administration, both past and present, to go before these various committees. He has said that he would oppose that. Republican House Judiciary Committee member Debbie Lesko joins us right now.
Not enough phone calls going through.
Congresswoman, can you hear me? This is one of those days where a lot of things are not going well. But just to update you on that, hopefully we'll connect the right wires with her. The president had argued that the report is out. People have had a chance to read it. There's no point in getting various witnesses who talk to the Bob Mueller folks to then talk to those on Capitol Hill and these various committee representatives to explain what they said. Don McGahn, for example, the president's former top counsel, they want to talk to him because he testified for more than 30 hours with Bob Mueller. And among the things he was repeating was this oft-mentioned story that the president wanted him to fire back in the days Bob Mueller. He said he would not do that. And of course, Bob Mueller was never fired. Now, the president denies he ever made that and ever urged that. The Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, was defending the president and this investigation. Now back to the Congresswoman on this. Hope we have corrected things, Congresswoman. What do you make of this back and forth over whether folks should testify?
Well, you know, the whole thing is, quite frankly, ridiculous. The American people want Congress to get big issues done. I mean, we had Social Security saying they're basically going to run out of money next year. And instead of working on these big issues, the Democrats' main focus, coordinated effort, is to take out the President of the United States, to undermine him. And you can see it in every single committee, including the Judiciary Committee, which I serve on. Chairman Nadler doing subpoenas, the House Intelligence Committee putting out subpoenas, Maxine Waters asking for banking information. I mean, this is a coordinated effort to undermine the President of the United States. It's been going on for 2 years, ever since he's been elected, and they are obsessed. They are absolutely obsessed.
Well,
with
Congressman, they say no more obsessed than Republicans were in going after Hillary Clinton and having her testify on Capitol Hill about emails, about Benghazi, you name it. Each party plays politics with this. Do you think that's a fair criticism? I can't believe this. We lost her again. That was not intentional. We're going to go to break here, guys. I very much apologize for this. The president has been saying on this he is not going to budge. He's not going to give in. And he doesn't see a reason to. And that the American people... All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm already getting email from people who say, well, Neil, we've already suspected you don't like Republican congressmen and women when they're on and you shut their mics down. As if. I don't even know how to put my own on. But we apologize for that. It has happened, some worms in the system here early this morning, so I apologize for all of that. And when it happens, I know it's very, very frustrating to me as well. Meanwhile, the president said to meet with Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the Oval Office next week, ostensibly to work on something they can find mutual agreement, that is, an infrastructure plan. But that might be easier said than done. What can we expect from all of this? Joining me now, CPA and market analyst Dan Geltrude. We've also got Jonas Max Ferris back with us, Payne Capital Management Senior Wealth Advisor Michelle McKinnon. It might be a political show, Michelle, but could they actually cobble together something that resembles an infrastructure plan?
I mean, it would be great news, Neil, because let's face it, the only way we get long-term economic growth is either a boom to the population, and I'm childbearing years and I'm not having kids anytime soon. A lot of my millennial friends are not having kids anytime soon, or we get productivity. You can get productivity through infrastructure spending.
What would infrastructure have to do with whether you have kids or not?
You get growth, either population growth
I got you.
or productivity
I see what
you can get
did
infrastructure
there. There we go. All right.
and productivity, you're in good shape.
Jonas, what do you think?
Neil, I don't know if you remember, a lot of kids are conceived in cars. You need roads for cars.
Oh, I see. Now, there we go.
Isn't that parking lots?
It's a family show, Jonas.
Now it's the cars, the charge on the car right now because there's no electric chargers around, so it'll pull over. Okay, getting back to the point, I actually thought there was going to be an infrastructure plan by now because it was, something both sides agree on. It has the FDR, New Deal qualities, but also Trump is a construction guy. It's the one thing he really is an expert on. And
it's expensive, though.
Yeah, well, okay, I was hoping there would be some sort of plan with, private thing, tolls, paying for it, borrowing money, whatever. The problem is there is no plan from either side that people could get onto. I think that's why it won't get done. Not so much the in-flight. I think there could be agreement on it. I just don't see a tangible, large-scale plan. Trump was talking about, at first, I think $1.5 trillion 10-year plan, then down to $1 trillion. I don't think we'll even get a few $100 billion. And it needs to be in the T's because, as you see in New York City, some of these projects are tens of billions of dollars that are very small projects. So for the whole country to really radically improve and get up to the standards of things going on in China and Europe, it would take that kind of money, and there's no real tangible plans.
Well, first of all, I think we're in need of fixing a lot of roads and bridges and working on 5G and then rolling out the network and then utilities and the rest. I get that. But I also know just in roads and tolls we get $14 billion there. The Highway Trust Fund add expenses there, individual states at the federal level, better than $150 billion. I would first like to know where's that money going before we start piling more money in.
Well, it's a good question, Neil, as to where all this money goes that we tax, and it seems to just disappear into the black hole. You know, in 2018, President Trump made a suggestion, and he said that let's go with a 25-cent increase in the gas tax to put towards infrastructure, specifically towards infrastructure. Now, we haven't raised anything on fuel tax federally since 1993. Federal fuel tax is only at 18.4 cents. So we do have some room there.
States have raised their own taxes.
Yes, they have.
Right, on the federal level.
The average state is taxing fuel at 28 cents. So there is some room there. Now, I don't like taxes, but infrastructure is critical. So we have to do something. I don't believe we're going to make cuts in other places to allocate the money to infrastructure. So I think the best thing we may be able to do is a fuel tax.
I